Before you tell us what we can do, what have you done? I've always believed that the job of an effective legislator goes beyond merely proposing laws. For what are laws but written agreements entered into by members of society on how to harmonize their mutual relations? In fact, I do not believe that we suffer from the problem of too few laws. One of my proposed measures was the recodification of laws in response to an appeal from the legal community to put some order into our laws, their amendments, and those that have been repealed, because even our lawyers are at times confused. Consider the recent controversy over who gets to appoint the next Chief Justice. We maintain that there are no ifs and buts in Article 7, Section 15 of the Constitution, where it states that the current President cannot appoint anybody within 2 months prior to a presidential election up to the end of her term. An exemption exists, but it applies only for positions in the executive department. Yet you have 2 retired justices arguing exactly the opposite. How can former justices of the Supreme Court be so seemingly confused when the fact is that the provision regarding presidential appointments is stated clearly in the law? Our problem is the lack of political will to faithfully implement the many world-class laws that our legislature has passed. A preference for ambiguity, even when times call for clarity, leads to artificial controversies. Insecure or overly ambitious leaders need to create a climate of doubt because it's in the gray areas that its ambitions thrive. It is in addressing this problem that I focused on the fiscalizing aspect of a legislator's job, on Congress's oversight and investigative functions. Consider intelligence funds. In the proposed 2010 budget, a total of 1.4 billion pesos was allocated to confidential and intelligence funds. Woodrow Wilson once wrote that oversight is always preferable to investigation, which is like putting out a fire instead of preventing one. We propose that if the executive wants orderly transactions, at least a few members of Congress should be privy to all the details to determine if they were monies spent properly. However, this proposal was dismissed out of hand without even a single hearing for the reason that they undermined the executive's privileges. And yes, the investigations were a vital part of my functions too. I don't think anyone will begrudge me my efforts in this regard, from Hello Garci and the impeachments to NBN ZTE and the fertilizer scam. I did my duty at the forefront of these issues. The original design of the NBN ZTE project required a BOT agreement between government and the supplier, not a government loan. But during the NBN ZTE hearings, we learned that the project was entered into through a government loan despite instructions to the contrary from no less than the President herself. The cost of the intended government loan was 40 billion pesos, in which 16 billion was for the backbone and 24 billion was for the Cyber Ed project. June Losada belied this when he cited 5 billion as the actual cost of the entire project. Ito yung sinasabi niyang kalakaran ng gobyerno. Sobrang laki na ng patong, bubukol na. SCTEX took around 8 years to construct before it finally opened. Projects of this scale, I understand, normally require 2 years to complete. Furthermore, when SCTEX finally became operational, it was found that the central hub, which was Clark, did not have an exit, excluding Clark from the Subic-Clark-Tarlac Expressway itself. How can one justify these kinds of delays, where opportunities are lost, costs have escalated, and the people's burdens, instead of being reduced, end up being compounded? My active role in these congressional hearings has put me at odds with the administration. In 2005, it cost me my post as Deputy Speaker. It continues to put me at odds with the coalition of self-interest that currently holds power. It puts me at odds with other candidates for the presidency. To lead transformation, you cannot be part of the problem. As I said when I accepted the People's Draft, the job of Chief Executive is about the efficient allocation of resources. If you have hugged these resources for yourself, if you have lied, cheated, and stolen to gain power, how can you be trusted to lead the transformation our country so desperately needs? Going back on the issue of appointing a Chief Justice prior to the forthcoming elections, if we are to transform the country, it begins with doing what we can now to limit the damage and give our people a fighting chance to rebuild our damaged institutions. The Constitution imposes a blanket prohibition with few exceptions concerning midnight appointments. A candidate cannot ask for the people's mandate, pledging to improve the situation tomorrow if he becomes complicit in worsening the situation today. Hindi naman mahirap gawin ang tama. Alam naman ng lahat yan. Wala namang magic, wala namang sikreto. Pero bakit pilit pa rin ginagawa ang mali?